Excellent. And we're live on Facebook now.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello indeed. Hello, Agent.
Hello, delicious humans. I'll make sure my microphone's loud enough and I can hear you. Jenny Lee's saying hello, Andrew.
Hi, Jenny.
Mahubub, is it? Is that how I say your name? Good morning to you too. You must be coming from somewhere else in the world. I said it correct. That's good. Welcome. Welcome to our next session for the SuperHuman Summit. Abu Dhabi. Oh, well, welcome from Abu Dhabi. Lovely to have you live streaming in. And where are you today, Andrew? You're up in the valley, are you?
Yeah, I'm up in the valley, yeah.
Lovely.
Just in the office.
And I'm from all over the world. You can see I've got my world map behind you.
Yes, indeed.
I should just put a pin on and decide where I'm calling in from. Feel free to pop in the chat box, people who are jumping on now, where you're coming in from. I can see there's 12, 13 of you. Everyone's starting to stream in now. So feel free to pop in the chat box where you're calling in from. So welcome back to the SuperHuman Summit. We just had a little hour's break for lunch after an incredible morning of speakers who were just amazing. Hello, Mel's from Northeast Victoria. Well, we've got people from all over. We had Murray Guest this morning on unlocking your strengths. We've had Katrina Ruth, and that was a phenomenal chat and hearing about her story and history and how you can go beyond and be more of yourself and to really be your own brand. Hello, we've got people normally from Melbourne, but in Jurien in WA. So hello there in WA, Michael. We've had Sasha Fodorovsky, and she was phenomenal, talking how we can go and use and tap into our stress in order to become more superhuman when it comes to creativity, which was fantastic. A little bit of, I guess, admin before we get started. You'll see there is the chat box, which some of you are in already, and that's fabulous. So you can hop in the chat box anytime if you just want to post a comment or a thought. If you want to actually ask a question, though, of Andrew, and you need me to kind of intervene and get him to answer questions, are you happy to take questions along the way as we go, Andrew?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, okay. He's a facilitator. He'll be happy to roll that way. If you can do that in the Q&A box, that's the best spot to put questions, if that's okay. And also for those of you who are watching live on Facebook and I'm checking you, I'll be kind of moderating and checking your comments there, so that if you've got questions or comments that you're asking there, I'll be keeping my eye on that so that Andrew can keep doing what he's doing, and I'll let him know if you've got questions over in that land as well. So without further ado, thank you all for joining us. If you did want to watch along in the Facebook group, it's the Facebook group is called the SuperHuman Summit. We've got, I think, almost 400 people in there chatting and getting involved in the summit now. So that's fantastic. And this is only day 2, so much more to come. So make sure you hop over there if you wish to. Also, if you are listening to that, you want to turn the volume down on one or the other, because there is a delay between Zoom and Facebook, and you'll have like dual voices going if not. So you might want to pick one, not the other. So let me tell you a little bit about this lovely, delightful man that's sitting in front of you there without flashing going on now with his lights. I've known Andrew for quite a few years now, and we met several years ago, I guess, as 2 coaches meeting each other and finding out more about who we served and what we did and those sorts of things. And I loved getting to know Andrew more deeply. I've been involved in some groups with him and got to know that his path has been an interesting one, like many of us who start out on the corporate ladder and start climbing, and then maybe discover that we've got the ladder against the wrong wall, or just not the most one that serves us best. And so he has really come from a background of being in a lawyer and in corporate land in that way. And I think he actually posted in our group yesterday that about 40, he got hit by a bit of a Mack truck or had a bit of a realization, which he might share a little bit about with us. And he became a coach, and he's an exceptional coach. And I know I've spoken to people who have worked with him, and I've worked with him, and we've chatted lots along the way. And he really does help people go deeper into what really matters. He's also a dad. He lives on a little bit of an acreage kind of thing. He loves the land like I do. And he's a real family guy. He's a beautiful man, and he's speaking to us today about a super interesting topic. And we wondered if people would be curious about coming along, because it did mention God in the topic, and some people say, oh, that's not for me. And some people go, that's me. But it's probably from a different perspective. Andrew's going to talk a lot about knowing thyself. And really, I think isn't it the temple in Delphi that has the words over it that says, know thyself? Yeah. And it was something that Pythagoras said as well. So maybe Andrew's a bit of a history buff, I'm thinking, in amongst all of this. But really, this is a subject I think that's really close to my heart, and I'm really glad to be here in the background and co-hosting and supporting Andrew, because it's all about consciousness, and it's all about, you know, what we think about, how we bring that about, and where is the magic that we have to bring to life and to the universe. So I'm going to hand over to you, Andrew. You can pop your presentation on or just begin any way you like, but it's such a delight to have you join us, and it's great to reconnect.
Thank you very much for having me. Great event that you're running, and thanks for those kind words. I love you too, AJ. You're amazing. So let me just get my presentation up. Can you see that? Yeah, you got it? Yeah, and you're right, AJ. This quote is a Pythagoras quote. And the reason I thought I'd start with that is because what I've discovered after I've been coaching now for 12 years is this answer, or this question of who are you really, what's under the surface, it's the question. It's the question. Not only is it the question, which I think after, you know, I've done my 10,000 hours of coaching now, but it's the question which unleashes people. But not everyone wants to ask it. So, look, just to touch on that, well, I touched a little bit on my journey. Just as a lawyer, I was chief client partner in a big national firm, and did all the kissing of babies and all that sort of stuff, and did some big cases. I've had my one appearance in the High Court for a win, yay! So I did some big cases, which you would know if I ran through them. But I had around about 40. Well, I left at 40, and it was my midlife awakening, as I like to call it. Didn't buy a Ferrari. I took my 4 kids and my beautiful wife, who's also a lawyer, and we moved from the big smoke up to near Newcastle, which is where we are now. So, but this question, I think, is the question. And you know what? If you look back, if you look at the ancient Vedas, and we know the Vedas and the Upanishads, you know, that sort of ancient Indian texts, and how old are they? Somewhere between 5,000 years ago, or some say, if you look at the astronomical charts, in the maybe 70,000 years ago, some of them, who knows? But even they talk of knowing thyself and how important it is. And so then you've got the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Did you know thyself is in the temples in ancient Egypt? How about that? So it's just been a constant theme, and we probably hear it more from Socrates and Plato, Pythagoras, but this notion of know thyself. And more recently, Ralph Waldo Emerson talked about it. And then even Marianne Williamson talks about knowing thyself. So, you know, it's been a common thread, or a deep thread. And I think, you know, when you really begin to really understand who you are, if you really begin to do the digging, you have that realization that, you know, this great quote that I've heard you say this before, AJ, where spiritual beings have a human experience. And I think in order to get to that and then bring it into life, because it's one thing to have a duality, where on the one hand I can go and meditate and be this beautiful spiritual being, but then when I take myself into work or into relationships, and then all of my stuff comes out. And so I've got that real duality. I think the challenge for us is to bring that spirituality and bring it into everyday life, so that where we are at one place is how we are everywhere. And that idea of spirituality, because I think once you get there, that's where you'll find fulfillment, peace, joy, happiness, engagement, love, whatever you are looking for. When you really come inside and understand yourself, I think that's what opens the door to that. and that, you know, that means success in business. It works the same in business. And, you know, I did, and we were doing, you and I did a workshop together. And now I'm doing workshops with my good friend Shoshona, who I know is also a friend of yours, Native American Canadian, or Native Indian from Canada. And that whole notion of that spiritual life. And I just thought I'd share some pictures from a retreat we did recently. And we were around a campfire, and you'll see that lady in the middle with the back to the fire is Shoshona, and she's a medicine woman, did an apprenticeship for 25 years. She's been practicing it for I don't know how long. And she talks to the ancestors, and she's really embodies this connection with spirituality. And what Karen was, my beautiful wife, was taking the photos. And you can see, if you can see that photo, you can see there's something blue at the back of Shoshona. You see that? And as Karen took the photos, this, whatever it was, began to move around, which I just think is fascinating. And we were doing a bit of drumming, and there was a bit of a sacred space that had been created. And you can see that little blue, whatever it was, moving around. And then it's sort of, it's following her. As you can see, she's talking to somebody else. So if anything, I mean, I think for me that really, you know, finally visually brought home what I know to be true, and that was that spirituality, that connection with something greater. But it's funny, you know, here's my poo. It's funny because, you know, it's like trying to, when you go as a coach and you say to someone, you know what, you really need to understand yourself. It's like trying to sell a poo. You know, and you can say, oh, no. And you can give it all the polish and you can make it look a pretty colour, but it still looks like a poo. And even, you know, you can roll out results and things, how people have changed their lives, and it doesn't matter what you do with it, it's still a poo, yeah? It's like, I can shine it in so many ways. And I think, why is it that we resist it so? What's the resistance? And I think, I want to get onto that because I think I know why there's a resistance, but now's the time to really look at ourselves and to really understand who we are. And I think when I did that little blurb that I gave you, AJ, I mentioned this, like right now we're in an incredible time to be alive. This is an incredible time to be alive. And, you know, being from Australia and our originaries, our original people, they've had a prophecy for some time about there's going to be this shift, this big shift. And the first I heard of it was at this conference, this Nexus conference, where a fellow had actually had this vision of two timelines, one timeline being a huge wall of water coming over the east coast of Australia, and another timeline being a huge wall of light. And that there was a choice. And the huge wall of light would be a big shift of consciousness, of intelligence washing over the planet. So I heard about that 2 years ago, and just recently, and I'd encourage everyone to go and watch this video. This lady's amazing. I just type in grandmother law in YouTube and you'll get her stuff. And she's an elder, and what they're now telling us and trying to spread throughout Australia is, you know what, we're now in this phase of the light, this white light, this consciousness. And as that happens, Mother Earth is expanding and raising her vibration. And so we are called upon as being part of that entity to raise our vibration. So what does that mean? It means we've got to deal with our stuff. Because you know what, if we don't raise our vibration and Mother Earth does, and if we don't, what'll happen? Well, it won't be a pretty story, I don't think. So it's incumbent upon us now to really look. And what gets in the way of us looking, I think Nelson, the great Nelson Mandela, don't you love Nelson? In this little quote of his is the answer. As we're liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates us and liberates others. And it's the fear, there's some sort of fear. And that's why when you're trying to talk about, know thyself, people are like, it's like, it's like poo talk. I don't want to go there. So you need to begin to look as to what your bad habits are. That's actually, AJ is a small child. No, not really. And we've all got bad habits, don't we? We've all got bad habits. I've got as many, if not more, than everyone else. And those bad habits, the interesting thing is, where do they come from? Where do they come from? What's driving why we do what we do? And, you know, some of your bad habits might be a little bit more forthright. So, but where do they come from? And I think that to answer that question, you just need to look at, you know, how much of our life are we in charge of? And it's a great experiment. I think, I'm sure I've shared this with you, AJ, and hopefully you can see that. Can you see the board behind me? Yeah. So there's a great experiment. Remember when they were trying to test how much of our decision making is got an emotional impulse and how much is it totally cognitive? Because, you know, if that's a very, very bad brain being drawn there, can you see that or not? You're on mute, so I can't hear you, AJ.
We might need you to pause your presentation for a minute so that your picture goes big.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, if you make your video larger, and I'll just stop my video so yours goes bigger. Oh no, it's going to show Michelle.
I'll get it a bit closer if I can. I'll be eating it if I get any closer. Can you see that? I'm doing it black. You see that? Yeah. So let's say this front bit is the prefrontal cortex. So that's the bit, all the rational thinking, you know, decision making, learning languages, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So we call that the PFC. And let's say another part of the brain is the emotional center. And let's just imagine it's in the middle. It's not really, but let's just pretend. Yeah. So let's say that's the limbic. Yeah. Now this is the emotional center. So this is where you hold memories, emotions, patterns. Right. And we know, you know, if we put down here, you know, instinctive cerebral cortex, we might call this reptilian brain, we might call this mammalian brain, etc. So what they did was they had someone, they came in with caps and they got them to do a really, really simple task. And the simple task was, a lot of you probably heard this experiment, just push this button and decide when you're going to push it. So come in, make a decision, push, clear your brain, decide again, push, yeah? And so people came in and they went like this, you know, push, 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 yeah? So then they got out the brain scanning and began to map it. Okay, what happened? And as you would expect, the prefrontal cortex, hopefully you can see that red, the PFC fired momentarily before the actual press, as you would expect. So it's like bang, 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 yeah? But the fascinating thing was the limbic brain, because this is a totally unemotional decision, you would think. This is totally rational. But what they discovered was the limbic brain fired over here predictively 3 seconds beforehand. So like this, here, 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 and here. Now, what does that mean? That means people had decided at an emotional level to push the lever even before they knew they decided. And I mean, how more cognitive could you get? So the point of that is 90 to 95% of everything we do is driven emotionally. We're just not aware of it. We learn not to be aware of it and then we rationalize it later. So when we go back to, and I'll go back to my Prezzo again. So then you start to say, well, okay, who's driving the car? If this is the car of your life and you're driving around in it, who's driving? Is it you or is it this emotional stuff underneath? Now, truth is it's the emotional stuff underneath. Where does it come from? Where are all these emotions come from? This urge, the anxiety, whatever it is that's driving behaviours, and everyone can let out a combined, don't you love babies? I have 4 beautiful babies who are now very big, no longer babies. But we begin to build these ideas of how the world is at this age. You know, during the imprint period, which you probably know of, and that'd be for another time. So for me, I learned at a very young age that it was important. I knew if I was doing the right thing, if I was making people happy, if I was pleasing people. Yeah, and I've got a story about that. But I look at a couple of my recent clients. I mean, I'm dealing with an exec who's a big hitter in this town, who's been, but always had an incredible self-conscience. And we did some work, and what he discovered was that at a very young age, he had auburn hair and freckles, like he's a big buff fellow. but he had auburn hair and freckles, and some kids called him fly shit face, and he was incredibly self-conscious, and he's carried that for the rest of his life, and it's driven his behaviour. And there's, I've got lots of stories like that. Because, we come in, when we come in, how do we come in? Aren't we all wide-eyed and, we've got no barriers. We come in and everything goes in our mouth. My kids, when they used to go out the back when I'd gone on a farm, they go out and find the dog poos and put them in their mouth and say, oh, put the dog lollies down, darling. I've got to stop talking about poo. My wife will be horrified.
Yeah. You've got to think about poo, Andrew.
I do.
We've had a couple of comments in the Facebook group, and hello to Jennifer, Loretta, Mick, all the people who are watching, Angela, Sasha, Michelle. And Michelle's just said, we listen to people speak and we think that we're so objective, but there's no such thing. And Michelle Popovsky's also said that she's loving it, and this is really relatable. So thank you. We do have a question.
Yes.
From Mahubub, who we spoke to earlier, and that is, when emotion is driving us, how will we connect with our rational thoughts?
I think once you've been hooked by your emotion, it's really hard. That you will think you're being rational, but once those, when we know how we begin to release those amino acids throughout the body, those neuropeptides, which are the emotion, once they flood the cells, it's really hard to interrupt the pattern. So what you need to do, and this is this challenge of knowing thyself, is begin to work out what it is, or firstly, when are you triggered by emotion? Notice that. What is it that does it? And as you notice those things, you can begin to remove those triggers. And as you can then remove those triggers, it's easier day to day, because then day to day, you're not being shot off on a spiral of flooding yourself with emotional chemicals that then drive your actions. Now, it's really subtle. It's subtle because I'm not talking bursting into anger when we all know we're totally out of control. Or we get an overwhelming sadness about something and we just can't. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about little choices we're making every day. So I think the way to discover them, because what happens is you're this child, right? And when you're this child, aren't babies open? They're just open, no barriers. But do we stay this way? Of course we don't. We don't stay this way because we begin to feel that emotional pain. And so now I begin to build a bit of a protective barrier. And when you're little, this is the beginning of the personality. This is the beginning of the ego structure. And you remember when you're little, sticks and stones can break your bones. Your parents say that to you, but insults hurt because our protection mechanism, we're so open, we own what people are saying to us, and our protection mechanisms are a little bit soft, a little bit like a cardboard suit of armor. And so we build it and we build it and we build it. And this is the defense that we're using in the personality to stay safe, emotionally safe, to keep the world at bay, to survive, to get through, to do what we think we need to do. And then you get a little bit older and you go to work, and now you've got you've got a RoboCop suit on. And so now you can attack or you can defend. We have different strategies. Some people are in your face. Some people just go within themselves and numb out from the world. But we develop this fantastic suit, and then, we take that to work, or we take that to relationships, or we take that, to run our own business, or whatever we do. And we wonder why, things don't go because as well as we would like, because this is a protective mechanism which is actually hiding the true essence of who we are. And we build it because we think there's something missing when there's not. We think there's something missing. So we build something on the outside that we think is the thing that's missing. Maybe it's strength. Maybe it's the ability to be peaceful. Maybe it's, I want to be loved. I want to be lovable. So I have to look after everyone so I can be lovable. But whatever it is, we're building something. And then if you don't stop, I've seen people in their 70s and they come to me and they look a bit like this. It's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to go back to the essence of who you are if you've just kept on putting on extensions because you defend, because it never works. The whole defensive mechanism, the whole strategies that we're using to stay safe and to be invulnerable are the things that take us further and further away from who we are and from the joy and essence of life. And it's hard to pull these things down, but we're really being called upon now to do something about it. Now, I think you need three things. And firstly, I want to say that, the tool that I use to get it to begin to go in is a tool called the Enneagram, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I think you need three things to go on this journey. And the first thing I think you need some courageous determination. Why? Because, this is think of the hero's journey. This is the journey for the brave. If it wasn't, everyone would be doing it. Because, if you really want to begin to unlock who you are, you've got to acknowledge some things about yourself. You've got to go to where it hurts. And that takes bravery. And you know what? It's not just once or twice or three times that you might push up against it. It's a constant journey, because the truth is, if you really want to be who you're meant to be, and look, and you are already, but if you really want to let that out of the box and really know who you are, you've got to run towards the cannons, not away from them. You've got to move into where you find it uncomfortable. And I don't mean just go in and just be beaten up, but go in, find what's the resistance, and then do something with it. So that's number one. Number two, I reckon you need ferocious curiosity. You've got to ask yourself, why do I do what I do? Why, when somebody says A to me, do I feel B? And why does that pattern keep on repeating? Why this life I'm living, why has it created itself? What's happened? And as you begin to apply that ferocious curiosity to courageous determination, you bring those two together, you get perseverance. So I'm brave, I'm going to keep pushing, and I'm going to keep looking. So there's your perseverance, yeah? You need perseverance to be on this journey. And then I think the other thing is some humble openness, because when you're humble and you're open and you're not trying to be, that means you're not trying to be invulnerable. You can begin to let some ideas in. You can begin to maybe appreciate or accept, maybe there is something fantastic in here that I'm hiding from the world. Being humble and open, you might also be able to accept, this reality that I don't like. If you don't like it, I've created it. Now, when you combine humble openness, I think, with courageous determination, that's when you get self-discovery. Be open, keep pushing. That's when you discover some great ahas. And then when you combine that openness with ferocious curiosity, you get brutal self-honesty. But what I've discovered is if you do those things, and I've done it with my clients a lot, where do you end up finding yourself? You get release. That's right in the middle. You get this release of all this stuff you're carrying on. You get access to your true self. And I think ultimately, and this is something that I've just recently, 3 years of doing the work, like I begin to experience myself, is I'm beginning to really remember who I am. And really, I understand why I'm here and where I fit. And geez, I've been looking a long time.
I was just going to jump in, because hearing you talk about, and I love this model, Andrew, I think it's fabulous. I love the language in it. I love the concept of humble openness and ferocious curiosity and courageous determination. What great language. The more I was hearing you speak about this model, the more I could actually hear that there's some personal experience in here. This has come from the limbic, or it's not come from the intellect so much. I can hear this is lived experience.
Yeah, very, very much so.
And yours, and probably your coaching clients as well, no doubt. Yeah.
So I'll give you some examples. of this. And the tool I use, as you know, is the Enneagram, which is this tool here. Don't get too worked up about it, but this is just a model which puts names to personality structures and takes it back to an essential essence of who you are, a divine truth about you and what you've decided you're lacking. And it's normally I'm not lovable, or I'm defective, or, it's a term like that. I'm I'm not valued, I'm not valuable. It'll be something like that. But it's a real spiritual journey. But just coming back to here, for me, when I first did this journey, I don't know how many of you might have known me 5 years ago or more. I was doing the motivational speaker Tony Robbins thing. Yeah, come on, Tony Robbins, massive action, like that for 3 or 4 days, and being upbeat and high tempo and laughing and using all the chemicals to put a positive spin on things. And what I discovered was actually that's my defense strategy for the world. And they're great strategies. We all have great strategies. And
a great strategy for a number 7, right?
Yeah, I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, yes.
So am I. So we all love the rah-rah number 7.
Yeah.
Enthusiast.
And it's a great thing to have, but I thought it was the thing. And what it did, it blindsided me. Actually, I was using it as a bit of an escape. So I was really blindsided by it. And once I realized that the structure of who I was meant that I saw everything through that lens. I mean, it was never been so humble and eviscerated in my entire life. I cried for a long time once I discovered it, because it was like I built this identity that I thought was, me coming to because I was a great seeker. In fact, it was my style, the strategies I used to keep myself safe. What a great undoing. But that was the beginning of me really getting a lot more depth and calmness in my life. The anxiety that I used to carry, I didn't even know I carried it. Once I discovered it, I could see it everywhere. I didn't really realize I carried it. That anxiety has really dissipated. And I've kept on looking, I noticed I get in a situation and something would happen. And I go, why did that happen? And I'd look for the limbic trigger. Oh, there's that feeling, follow that feeling, go down to Gestalt. What's there? And I discovered more things. And as I've done that, I've just got so much more contentment in life. And so, I use myself as a guinea pig, and then, this is what I'm doing with my clients, which is wonderful. I had another exec in I think last week, come in and got a real sense of obligation and almost a sort of a hesitancy to offend anyone. Not that you want to be offensive, but won't speak up for themselves. And there's this guilt that they carry if they say anything that someone takes offense to, rightly or wrongly, enormous guilt. And this is a real barrier. So using their personality style and understanding that, we discovered from a very early age, he loves his brother, and he'd been playing and tripped his brother up in front of the whole family, and his brother laughed, but his brother went quiet. And then he felt that his brother was embarrassed. And then he felt enormous guilt. And he carried that guilt all through his life, and he just was always just a whisker off the edge of his behaviour. So he was constantly just going, oh no, too far, oh ah. So that guilt, and when he didn't remember, have that memory. He didn't realise he'd had that memory. When he discovered it, it was just this huge whoosh, and now he's got new options. So there's lots of stories about it. That's why it's such exciting work, and that's the deep work that we're all, I think, being called to do.
So Michelle Popovsky is saying, what an empowering tool. Yes, it is indeed. And I think, so what you're talking about, the armor, could be, once you know your Enneagram, there's strengths in that. And we heard Murray talk about strengths this morning, but there's always a shadow side, isn't there, when you overplay the strength or rely on it too much. And in the Facebook chat group, we've got people saying, yes, personality is a defense, but we try and develop the suit. Other people are saying, I like to believe we have a choice to either live in love or fear. And my mantra is we get to choose, and it takes bravery, which is what you're kind of talking about there. And often those gestalts are formed so early, aren't they? And we don't even realize that we're playing that program.
No, they're unconscious. They're unconscious. That's how it works. They're unconscious. And so much of our behavior is not rational.
Which is the beauty of having a coach or someone to help you delve into that gestalt or shine a light in some of those darker corners. We've got someone on Facebook asking, this is Lisa, what if you struggle to find that memory where something started? Great question.
Look, it's hard to do yourself. I would say the thing to follow is always the emotion. It's always the emotion. So it's not that you would think, okay, I've got a problem with, people disrespect me. Let's go and look at the times I was disrespected. No. What you would do is you would find, okay, say disrespect was an issue. I really feel disrespectful and hurt by that. You would find the feeling and you follow the feeling. That's the golden thread. And then you just go to a big one, and you just ask, you've got to get in a place, and that's what a coach would do for you. But you get in a quiet place, relax, and you just say, follow the feeling, go back to one that was significant a little while ago, or one little bit before that, one little bit before that. And finally, you would ask yourself, go to the very first one, the very first time this was ever an issue for you in your life. Now, it's hard to do on your own when you're not, I can do it on my own, but I've been doing it with people for 12 years. I've never had anyone not be able to find the first memory, ever. No, that's untrue. When I first started, and I wasn't as good as I am now, I did have people get stuck. These days, no one gets stuck. And it's just so much, it's just having the conflict, because you couldn't do you couldn't do that response and that emotion if you didn't have the first memory. It just couldn't.
And also sometimes, there's so many modalities, and we've put Andrew's links there if people want to link in or ask him more. There's so many modalities we can use and tools like the Enneagram, and also things that are accessible like meditation that help us clean the slate every day without even needing to know what was that thing. And often it's counterintuitive, isn't it? I know I've had things that have held me back around my need for freedom, and then have gone back and realized that there was a time when I was in a public toilet with my mother, and she made me stand outside the door while she went to the toilet, and I wandered off down the street enjoying my freedom. And it wasn't until she came chasing and looking for me and crying that I realized that having freedom was actually scary, or that's what it made me believe. So sometimes we're not quite sure where those memories come from. Yeah.
No. And they're not rational. And it's the thing is, it's almost like we're because these gestalts just build and they drive our behaviours. If you don't go back and address those things and there's many modalities. I'm just using one. There's many ways to skin a cat, as the saying goes. But if you don't, it's like you're taking advice from the 2-year-old, 4-year-old, 6-year-old, 10-year-old self. The 10-year-old self made a decision, and that's now driving your life, even though you don't realise it. Or, the 5-year-old's made a decision or felt a feeling, and guess what? That might be something that your parents gave you. Because, a big issue when I first began to do this work for me was control. And I was doing this work, and then I had this aha one day that my mum controlled through emotion. God, I love my mum. If you're watching, Mum, hi, love you. But my mum, that was my experience, it controlled through emotion. I was furious until about a month later, I realized I was a control monster. So I picked the bag up. And then I realized when I looked at my mum, she was in a very strict religion, some might call it a cult. And when she left, her parents said, "This is like your death to us," and never spoke to her ever again. So how's that for control? And then my grandfather's family, because he was the black sheep and didn't follow things, he was sort of written out. And then his mother was written out of big pharmaceutical suppliers. She didn't marry the right person. So they wrote her out of the will because she wouldn't follow them. So look at all that control. Passed down. So it's often the decisions that or the choices or decisions about life that we've made aren't even ours. They've been given to us by our ancestral lineage. Sometimes past life, whatever. And now we're running a life with them.
And at times like now when we're in COVID, society and circumstances may also be creating some of those for us. And I'm just mindful, we've got about 5 minutes or so, and then we need to go into Q&A or whatever, however you want to play, because we're having some.
Okay. Here's just the 9 styles. There's I'm going to send you, anyone who wants to do the questionnaire and send it to me, I'll answer it for them and send it back and give them some reading material. But there's 9 styles. And when we talked about, when I said, Nelson Mandela said, when we can liberate ourselves from our fears, the Enneagram says that here's the 9 core fears. And you'll see those on the left-hand side there. And don't worry about where so much you fit, but you might, if you read that, find something that resonates with you. You may not. But these fears are, in a sense, that this is keeping us from our divine selves, our true self, knowing who we are. And as they manifest, we get further and further away from that essential self. So the challenge is to begin to notice these fears. And because we have this fear about ourselves, what we tend to do is we build the compensating self-concept, which is on the other side. This is the, I guess, the carbon copy of who we are, that we think this is the thing that we think we need to deal with the world. For me, it's happy, spontaneous, fulfilled. For my beautiful wife, of 25 odd years now, who feels insignificant and lacking an identity, hers is, I'm sensitive, different, extraordinary. She's an author. And often you'll find a lot of our great creatives are in that 4 zone. For the great helpers of the world who just want to look after everyone else but not themselves, that's the 2 style, and they really just want people to love them, and they feel that they're not lovable, they're not wanted. So you know what? I'm going to make a life of making sure that I'm loved and wanted by doing everything for everyone. And so the compensating self-concept is I'm loving, thoughtful, and selfless. Now, there are great strengths in all these styles, yeah? There's a massive strength for the 7, great planners, great optimists, great energy bunnies. For the 6, incredibly loyal, incredibly dependable. For the 5, the Einsteins of the world, able to, think about the world and change it up and see patterns and do amazing things. The 4, the great musicians, the great artists. The 3s, the great doers, the great inspirationalists who just, you can't help but be inspired to do stuff when they're around. The 2, the great lovers, the great healers, the nurturers. The 1 are the people who are the idealists. Think Mahatma Gandhi, stand up for ideals, for what is right. The 9, the great peacemakers. Think Abraham Lincoln. And 8 is the great, they're the great, they do, and they're natural leaders. They're big, they're bold, and they make massive change in the world. You think of Martin Luther King was an 8. So there's massive strengths in here. What we tend to do, though, is we use that compensating self-concept and we use that muscle too much. And we take it to a place where it's more protective rather than who we truly are. If anyone's interested in any of that, and here's the thing from Marianne Williamson. So I think once you begin to strip that personality off and break it down and undo that structure, the true essence of who you are comes out. And then this beautiful quote from Marianne Williamson, we were born to make manifest the glory of God within us. And I'm talking about that creative energy, the universe, all that is, whatever you want to call it. I don't care what you call it. But that is in here. But it's covered up by this structure. And so by peeling that off, we can break out. And that will mean rising our energy with Mother Earth in this incredible time of transition. And I hope more of us
Yes. I love that. My 7's wanting to burst out. Andrew, we've had a few people, firstly in the LinkedIn group, in the Facebook group, and also here, saying that they'd love to know where do they get more information on the Enneagram and how can they take the test. I've suggested they contact you on LinkedIn to find out.
Can I see this slide? You there, AJ? Yeah, you'll see there's a link down the bottom, andrewhughes.com/Enneagram. And that they'll get that questionnaire. If they fill it out and send it to me, I'll do it and send it back to them. I'll score it and send it back to them with some reading material.
So it's andrewhughes.com. Is there a .au?
No, /Enneagram.
E-E-E-E Enneagram. Just that? Beautiful. Yep. I've put a link in for people.
Beautiful. Okay, and there you go, I'm back.
Awesome.
How'd we go? Was it all right?
Brilliant. So we've got about 2 minutes or so, people. If you have questions, you know what to do. Use the Q&A box. Michael's saying fantastic and thanks for your time. Anyone in Facebook land or here in Zoom, now is the time to ask questions of this brilliant human. And I think, or even just join in the conversation. Can you see the chat box there, Andrew? We've got a question as well. Can your Enneagram score change over time? Great question, Michelle Popovsky.
Your score may change, right? How you answer the questionnaire might change, but the essence of who you are is not going to change. Yeah. So the health, and that is, you can be a really healthy person spiritually, and be showing the best of who you are, and so you really only get a hint of the personality. Or you can be someone who's quite unhealthy, quite distanced from the true self, and your personality might have edges and might be like a blackberry bush. No one wants to go near it. You're in the middle, but no one can see you, yeah? So the journey is to be more healthy. So I would say that your style, where you fit, because remember, your style is really about the structure, which is based around a core pain. That core pain, you might have a couple of them, but the core pain that's driven the structure ain't going to change, yeah? So your style's not going to change. How you answer the questionnaire might. Where you think you fit might, but ultimately the structure is what the structure is. And the Enneagram, that's why only you know, because it's all about how you're thinking. It's all about what is going on in your head as to how you're dealing with the world. You'll know, because you'll read one of these types and you go, oh, someone's inside my head. What is going on? And I don't think that changes.
Yes. Great. And another great question, Michelle said thank you, she got it. Another great question from Michael here. How similar are these to the archetype work from the likes of Carolyn Myss, who was recently here in Australia?
I don't know Carolyn's. I don't know Carolyn's work. I don't know Carolyn's. Look, the Enneagram comes from 300 AD. There was a Bagrius Ponticus, I think he was administrative officer of the Catholic Church. He got excommunicated because he was having an affair with a parishioner's wife, very naughty. So he went in penance, he went to the desert and he meditated on what was between us and God, us and the divine. And he came up with 9 ideas. And those 9 ideas, 7 of them were taken in 600 AD by Pope Ivan the Great. He took 7 of those ideas and called them the 7 deadly sins. Yeah? But those ideas have been around in mystic schools because these are the ideas that are between us and really discovering our divinity, who we truly are. They've been used by mystic schools, the Sufis. They've been used all around the world to deconstruct personality and get closer to God.
Yeah.
That's why I like it. I like it because it's old. No doubt there is some cross-pollination with the archetypes, no doubt, because all of these things are archetypical. But I'm not an expert on that, but I do know a lot about the Enneagram. Yeah, it's got just such depth and richness.
Yeah, brilliant. And I know there was another question that just came in, but we are going to have to, well, maybe if you can answer in a minute, Andrew, because then we need to hop off because we've got Sister Janti coming on. What is the connection of knowing thyself to the prophets? And I know St. John of God and people also talked about a lot of that ancient wisdom, but is there a connection, knowing thyself to the prophets? Interesting.
But I think that's exactly what they're talking about. Because when you truly know thyself, you understand the creator within, I would think. And when that's when you begin to really manifest the God within, and that's when we really begin to, live up to our potential, live up to what we want this world to be.
Great.
I hope that answers that. And in a minute.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I know someone just asked, does your Enneagram personality change? And we kind of just answered that before. So maybe even hop in the Facebook group and have a look at the replay if you didn't catch all of the wisdom that just exploded out of this delicious human's brain. Thank you so much, Andrew Hughes. Go and check him out on LinkedIn or on his website. I've posted in the Facebook group a link to andrewhughes.com Enneagram, and I've also posted it here in Zoom, so you can go and take the Enneagram. I know I've done it a couple of times and I keep coming out a 7. It's undeniable.
You are a 7, there's no doubt.
I love the tool. It's really useful, especially understanding your balcony and your basement and really going, when am I at my best? When am I challenged? But thank you all for joining us so much.
I'll just give my email address, which is andrew@andrewhughes.com. So do Andrew? The thing, andrew@andrewhughes.com, send it to me there.
Great. So if not, email him there. We're about to hop on. You'll need the new link for the next webinar, and that is with beautiful Sister Janti, who is going to talk about mind-body matters. All of these presentations just seem to build on top of each other. So can't wait to hear her wisdom. Thank you so much, Divine Humans. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
Hope to see
Marianne.
you on the next speaker.
Thanks, Michelle.
Bye for now.
Bye.